dinner, we are going to welcome this year's keynote speaker, Michael Scott, and have a little bit to say about him while he makes his way up. So, Michael was born and raised outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and he and his brother were raised by a single mother. He graduated in 2009 from high school and attended Kutztown University in Pennsylvania for 1 year and then decided that he wanted to enlist in the Marine Corps in 2011. Before his first duty station, he married the lovely Emily, who has been happily married to him. Happily? That's what your notes said. Yeah, she put up with you for the last 13 years. Yeah, I could tell it better. She's a gem. They have 4 beautiful children, all daughters, and currently reside outside Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. Now a staff sergeant, he has spent 13 years in the Marine Corps and is still on active duty. What I find most interesting in the way that I met Mike is that besides being a motor transportation operations chief, he is also a suicide intervention specialist, striving to make a difference and a positive influence on both service members and people everywhere. And he, along with JP, run an amazing podcast called Stashed Away Thoughts, and I had the privilege of being a guest on their podcast and meeting them this summer. And after they allowed me to talk a lot and tell a lot of our story about foster people, I was blessed to hear just a little bit of his story at the end, and only because I asked, because he is so humble and kind. So just getting a little insight into kind of what got him to this point in life, we asked if he would be interested in sharing his inspirational message with all of us tonight. And so if you would, Mike, we would love to hear from you for 2024. No pressure.
Ice, baby. Alright, stop. Collaborate and listen. Ice is back from a brain. Sorry. I forgot that this wasn't karaoke and that this is supposed to be a speech. And what I would call that was me about to go Acappella, right? Definition of Acappella is without music. And as I try to attempt to do a good Vanilla Ice impersonation, I think to myself, Acappella, without music. And I tie that quickly to life itself. Most of you in this room would probably think that your life is not going as planned. There's no background music. There's no background singers, dancers. There's no beautiful symphony. Sometimes life is just Acappella. And we have to make it our own too. We have to stay with the groove. We have to dance the dance. Some of us aren't good at dancing, but we try, right? And that's okay. And then I look at an event like this, beautiful and elegant, Walls for People puts it together. I look around the room and I see families, friends, contributors, veterans, soon-to-be college graduates. Woo, right? And I think about some of those groups that are here today, the veterans, college graduates. And though they don't mesh because one went to school while the rest of us couldn't go to school, right? And our scores would say otherwise. So we joined the military, much like myself, much like JP. But something like Walls for People brings those two groups together. It builds a bridge. It takes away the divide between college students, veterans, active duty, military. But there is also one thing that those groups have in common. They also have in common with many of you that are here tonight. And that's the feeling of loss of purpose, loss of guidance. They lose that sense of pride of belonging. They're not a part of a team anymore. They don't have a drive or a motivation to accomplish their goals, climb and grab those accolades. Well, I'm here to remind you, not here to inspire you. Well, maybe I am, or motivate you, because you're already doing that. I'm here to remind you that there still is a purpose. There's still is a reason to stick around. I often find myself telling others, if life was easy, then everybody would stick around. So between the two groups, veterans, first, you get out of the military, maybe you lost some loved ones, some friends along the way, maybe you lost yourself a little bit, fell victim to things like mental health, illness, PTSD, and you think that that's the story. That's the end of your book. That chapter is closed, it's written, and it's done just as it is. But it's not. For college students, soon-to-be graduates, you spend 4 to 5 years struggling at times, testing, quizzes, all in a mature way, correct, right? No funny business. But to get that degree, to propel you to a job, an occupation that you have aspired to obtain, to represent. But then as you graduate, maybe you find out that that degree doesn't apply to what you want to do in life. And that's okay. Maybe things aren't mapped out. Maybe you don't have the support anymore. You're relocated. And that's okay. So let me tell you, you can take the small things that you've accomplished, the small wins, day to day, and those still matter. Those small things, as they add up, the small wins, the goals you crush, the accomplishments you achieve, they add up. I look at my phone often, and I have a maybe cute photo of myself in there, in my background, and it's a picture of 4-year-old Mike with hair, believe it or not. Actually, luscious locks. And I have a fishing pole, and it's got a little fish on it. To me, 4-year-old, the fish was this big. But then also captured in that photo is my mom, who raised me as a single mom. And she had to do some of the jobs that a dad would do. She helped me become the man I am today and find a wife such as the one that I have and I'm blessed to have. But in that photo, you can see the smile on my mom's face as 4-year-old me caught that first fish. No matter the size of the fish, small fish, was a big win. But that big win wasn't just for me. That big win impacted my mom and gave her a big win. Small prize, big win, big accomplishment. So what I'm going to tell you about these small wins is that with every little goal that you achieve, whether that's learning a new hobby and then using it, writing a letter to somebody, maybe learning how to ride a bike again, maybe learning how to find comfort in an area where you weren't comfortable before. Take the small wins and make them big. Because those wins that you have a farther impact on people that might also be in the same photo. The people around you, your parents, your family, your friends, co-workers, it can impact them too. Now you're probably questioning, how does a Vanilla Ice wannabe with a Hawaiian shirt get picked to talk at such a lovely and elegant event? Well, my backstory is that I too at one point thought that my chapters were done. I thought that my story was over. If you asked me, from 2019 to 2020, where was I? I would tell you underwater. With the feeling that I couldn't float, couldn't swim, couldn't breathe. I felt that nothing was going to get better, that it was negative after negative. In 2019, August 4th, that was actually the last day that I talked to my older brother. My older brother John, Navy vet, a squid, if you will. Did his time in Desert Storm, and then he struggled with PTSD. He struggled with his mental health illness. He then struggled with drug addiction, alcohol abuse. He felt abandoned. So then on August 5th, my brother decided that his only option was to take his own life. Leaving behind a brother, a mom, a dad, and children. And he felt that that was the only option. And that sat with me. Still sits with me to this day. Guilt, anger, and those are emotions that I have, raw emotions. I think I felt guilty because I had spent the past 13 years in the Marine Corps, including that occurrence, learning about suicide awareness and prevention. And it never stuck. To someone like my older brother, I didn't see the signs. I didn't see the behavior changes. They were there. Maybe I didn't pick up on the signals. But more importantly, I didn't say anything. And that stuck with me for a long time. So as I collected myself, after I was maybe a degenerate for 2 weeks, gathered myself back up and asked the Marine Corps, how can I help the Marine Corps do better? So I became a suicide interventionist for the Marine Corps. And I thought, how can I apply training, public speaking, and just a good overall attitude to service members to help them stick around, to help them find the resources they need and they deserve. When I thought everything was going good, now we get to November of 2019, so short months later, and I get a very awkward and weird phone call. And I have a gentleman from New Jersey, and he asked me, hey, is this Mike Scott? And I replied, yes. And he said, hey, I hate to inform you, but your father, Bill, has passed away. And I sit there for a moment. I'm actually on my way to an SEC football game. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, wow. It was a weird feeling. Because as I remind you, raised by a single mom. The first time I ever met my dad was when I was 21. And that was a short chapter, a short moment in time, where I talked to him, learned a little bit about myself, but what it did was it filled a spot in my heart. So then you hear that my father had passed, and I was the only next of kin that they could locate to take care of what was to come. Traveled back to Jersey, wrap everything up there, and then I shut that chapter. So now 2 negatives in my life. And maybe again I feel like I'm underwater a little bit. Then, unfortunately, March of 2020, I get probably the most upsetting phone call I possibly could have. When I'd already thought that I had gone through it with my brother, a little bit with my dad, I get a call from my mom, and she informs me, hey Mike, I have stage 4 bladder cancer. And I think to myself, man, there really is no quit this music thing. And I think that here goes another chapter to close. But then I also, because I wanted to be a college graduate at one point, I did some quick math. And I took 4 minus 4, which equals 0. I thought you guys would get that faster. Equals 0. And I thought to myself, stage 4 being the worst, 0 being cancer-free, what happened to 1, 2, and 3 in between? And my mom never really told me what happened to those ones, but here we are at stage 4 cancer. She said, Mike, I'm 70-something years old. I'm not doing chemo. I've gone through it. And I said, okay, so what's your plan? So she went through immunotherapy, which for those of you who know, it's a new treatment. Still being kind of tinkered with, developed. Anyway, so she does immunotherapy, and she says, but I'll tell you what, Mike, the minute that they offer hospice care, take it. I want to kick my feet up, I want to drink a little, I want to enjoy my time while I can, and and leave peacefully. So I said, all right, Mom, I promise. End of July 2020, get a phone call from the doctor, and he says, hey, Mike, hate to break it to you, but we're kind of running out of options with your mom. Me and the nurses have done a lot of the things that we can, but we really can't hold back, what's soon to come. We're running out of these options. And he said, we were thinking about moving your mom in the hot, and I said, yep. He said, you don't want time to think about it? Absolutely not. And it's not because that's what my mom, it is because what my mom wanted, but I knew I didn't want to have to face my mom one more time after I turned my back on her and didn't give her hospice care. So there's my mom. She got the 2 weeks before she passed.
Right down the counter.
And I got to spend time with my wife. They didn't argue. It was nice. She got to see my children, her grandchildren. And then she got to actually argue with me a few more times before she passed. And it was nice. But what I was going to get at with these negatives, and what I leave with you today, is the negatives being my brother and my dad and my mom. But ultimately, my brother and my dad set me up for the time that I got to spend with my mom. Prepared me for what was next after these events. Maybe in a harsh way, my brother and my dad passing as they did set me up for absolute success and happiness with the way that my mom had left this earth. So though I wasn't a college graduate, and though I'm still not smart, I never did math for Marines, I leave you with this one simple equation. That if you take negatives and multiply to another negative, you get a positive answer. Now how does that apply to you? Take the small negatives in your life, or the big ones, and as they multiply over time, find faith in yourself or a higher power that you too have a positive resolution headed your way. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you for calls for people.
On the short people mind show. Be a little noisy. There we go. Okay. Thank you again so much, Mike, for being willing to share with us. We appreciate it very much.